Well, you guys are in for a really big treat on the Redeem Her Time podcast because I think I found like a soul sister in Theresa Taylor, who is our guest today. Theresa, I don't even fully remember how we met. I feel like it was somehow in Facebook land, and I don't really know how God did the connection, but we've gone back and forth multiple times, and now I'm getting to bring you here on the podcast. And so I'm really excited to be able to introduce you to my audience. So, I want to start off with you telling us about you, but I want to know about life outside of business. So, like, describe like
Sure.
what does Teresa's life look like? What are you juggling? What kind of roles are you playing in this season of life outside of
Oh, yeah.
business?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, we did meet in Facebook land. And then you had reached out and asked if we wanted to have a coffee date or something like
Yeah.
that. And so we did, and we hit it off. And so you came on to my podcast, and here I am for yours. And it's just been, yeah, I just love our relationship and how it's blooming. So, yeah, thanks for having me. Um, I'm a homeschooling mom of two. I live in Alaska. I'm married to a wildlife photographer out here. And life is busy, sure, in terms of like all the hats. But part of what you teach is finding that so-called balance, right?
Right.
And being aligned with God's will in our lives. Um, and so through that, actually, through finding my own balance, so to speak, I have, I didn't see that was on record there. I have learned that the things that I was struggling with in building my business were the same things that other women around me were struggling with. And so I don't know. Do you want me to share that now?
Well, I want to
I
ask you
guess
first
I
question, if I
could.
can, because I want to
Yeah.
dive into something that I'm
Yeah,
always curious
please.
about. We are recording this in
Yes.
December, and here's what I know. In the Midwest where I live, the days are really short and it's already getting dark. So I really want to know from somebody who actually lives in Alaska, like how much daylight do you actually
Hmm.
get this time of year? And like how does that affect you? Like, I mean, maybe you've been there your whole life, so it's just normal, but like
Yeah.
yeah, what is that like
Hmm.
actually being in that part of the country?
Yeah. Yeah, so I have pretty much been here my entire life. I actually am raising my children in the same town that I grew up in right now.
Oh,
So
fun.
it's very cool, but it's very cool in Alaska. Okay.
Literally, pun intended, right?
So yeah, literally. Yeah, we do still get a lot of light, but in the wintertime it does get a little darker than other places. It is normal to me, but it doesn't mean that it's easy.
Mm.
So we get sunrise is approximately 9:30 a.m. and then like right now, like the sun is pretty much already setting and it's 1:30 in the afternoon. It'll be completely
Wow.
down by 4.
Okay.
So the winter months are long.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily cold compared to other places in the United States, which some people are always surprised about.
Yeah.
But it's dark and it's long. The winter lasts a very, very long time. And we have a lot of mental health issues actually in
Mhm.
Alaska in the wintertime because it is so dark. Um, and you know, when it is cold outside, people are not outside as much
Mm.
either. So all of that contributes to the higher mental health rates that we have here in Alaska. But the summer's beautiful.
That's what I've
So we are
heard.
called, yeah, our nickname is the land of the midnight sun. And that's
Mhm.
because it doesn't officially, like it doesn't all the way go down. In June, on our longest day of the year, um, it'll still be like dusk.
Wow.
So you won't have the sun high up in the sky, depending on what part of Alaska you're in. Where I'm at, it's right outside of Anchorage. So, but it does set, and so it's like a beautiful sunset for hours, and then all of a
Mm.
sudden it starts rising again. So you'll
Wow.
see in Alaska, people have like aluminum foil over their windows in the summer to kind of keep the light out, or really good sun blocking curtains.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine saying like it was really challenging at like 11, 12 o'clock at night to like have
Yeah.
to go outside and tell her kids who are still playing basketball, like it's time to go to bed because it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting as a time strategist, like one of the things I've done is I've dove into the history of time. You know, before we had clocks, we went by the sun. And so it's so interesting to think about how even the concept of time would feel different in that area
Yes.
versus another area and things like that. But anyway, that was just me. And like I was like, I gotta ask her this while I've got her on the podcast. So okay, but yes, I want to dive into your story. And because you mentioned that you were struggling with things in your business, and then you realized that other women were struggling with things in their business. So maybe kind
Mhm.
of before you tell your story, give us kind of a quick picture of actually what do you do? What is your business?
Yeah.
And then we want
hmm
to hear like how did God get you there?
Yeah, yes, thank you. So, I'm a business coach. The kind of zone or niche that I help people with inside a business is really productivity and systems. So, building strategies that really make the best use of our time. And so through doing that, I created a program that's called the Pathway to 5K. And there's a story in there that I'm sure that we'll get to as well. But what I have noticed, and what I noticed in my business, so I went through a season when I first started getting into coaching. I went through a very, very high hustle season. And when I mean hustle, I woke up in the morning, I immediately got to work. I had all these to-do lists and tasks, and I was doing all the things that I saw other people doing. I was actually having some pretty good success, but I was not being able to maintain. And I started struggling with my health. I started gaining weight. My relationships with my husband and my children were suffering. I remember, standing in the kitchen, getting lunch ready for my kids, and also being like on my phone, trying to text people back as soon as I could. And
Been there,
one of
done
my kids,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I remember one of my kids was pulling on my shirt to like get my attention. And I was like, stop, leave me alone, let me finish this. So becoming short-tempered, all those things. Thankfully, I had a reset. Like the Lord really spoke to me, and actually, He used Facebook to sort of call me out of where I was. Facebook shut down my account for a few days, but I thought it was going to be forever. And that really gave me a little bit of separation to start analyzing where I had been, what I had been doing, where it was leading. And through all of that, I realized that there were some very specific things that I needed to do in business, and everything else that I was doing was fluff. It was things
Mm.
that I thought that I needed, because I saw other people doing them, or I had a coach that told me I needed to do certain things. But in the grand scheme, they were not producing the results I wanted for the effort I was putting in. So they really were just becoming time suckers.
Yeah. Box checkers, I
Yeah,
call that, right? Like a busyness,
yeah,
right? You're checking boxes and you're doing things, but not really seeing the results in the bank account.
right. So then what happens? You get to your bed at night and you're like, oh my gosh, like what did I really do today? Like I feel like I did a lot. I don't feel like I made any movement. And then you dread waking up the next day because you know it's going to happen all over again. And then you'll find yourself on your bed again thinking, oh my goodness, the day's over. It's like the same thoughts happening over and over and over again.
Groundhog Day. Yeah. Or insanity, right? Doing the same things and expecting a different result. Like that's the definition of
Right.
insanity. Yet we do that. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so what the Lord had showed me was that there was really three specific things that we needed to do in business. And when I started focusing my energy on those three things and realizing the time that I actually wanted to devote to my business, understanding my priorities, and you teach about this too, but like understanding where I wanted to focus my time, I homeschool my kids. So that was so important to me. And then for me to instead put my business higher than my homeschool, well, then suddenly all of my priorities are misaligned. And I'm not effective in homeschool for sure, but I'm not effective in any area of my life. So the Lord showed me these three key areas that I needed to focus on. And once I started doing that, and because I knew where I wanted to focus my time and how much time I had to give to something, then it caused me to become more strategic with that time that I had available to me. So instead of just posting content for the sake of posting content, right? It became what is a more strategic piece of content that will work more long term for me so that I don't have to do this over and over and over again. So things like that.
I love this. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's why I call myself an untime management strategist because there's
Yes.
strategy behind it. It's not just a one size fits all. Now, before you go into what those three
Yeah.
things are,
Yeah.
I want to kind
Uh-huh.
of like go back just a little bit because
Sure.
as you shared in your story, and I can totally relate, you were doing a lot of fluff, as you called
A
it.
lot of fluff.
We've
that
all
I
done a
thought
lot
was
of fluff.
good because lots of other people were doing that fluff.
Okay, and this is my
Right.
question for you, right? Like, let's dive into this. Like, why is fluff such a problem for
Mm,
business owners? Now, specifically, my audience is Christian business owners. Like, why, we know that our time is important. We know our time is precious. We know, we say all these things, and yet we still often fill it with a lot of fluff. So, like, let's kind of dive into that a little bit about like, why do you think that's such an issue? Maybe what is the world around us telling us to do, and what does it cost
yeah.
us, whether it's in our time, our life, our business? When we're just spending so much time checking the fluff boxes versus, doing things strategically.
Yeah. So I will do my best to get into all of those. And please remind me if I get a little off, like pull
Sure.
me back in.
Yeah, it was a lot of questions, but just kind of like let's dive
Yeah.
into the problem of the fluff part.
Oh, yeah. And it's such an important topic. All right. So, what I see happening, as a business coach, lots of my women have been in business for a long time. They've been trying different things. They're listening to lots of people. And that's part of the problem
Mm.
is we see people, we see these, so-called gurus that are doing certain things. And we feel like, oh, that's what we should be doing. We're trying to find the missing piece. Or we end up actually working with somebody and then we start implementing what they are doing and what they are telling us to do. But what really happens here is that all of these things become shiny objects that keep us, they like pull us from what God has wanted us to put our focus in. So the even though like all of these tasks, and we can go into what some of those are a little later, but what some of these tasks they might look good on the outside, they may work for a certain person, but even though they are good things, if they pull you away from your mission, your priorities, then all of a sudden you become misaligned, and then you start putting your time into doing all of these other things that you never should have been doing in the first place. And just like if we were multitasking, we like our output would be so minimal and it would not be our best effort versus if we just chose one task and we focused all of our energy and effort in there, and then we would get it done and we would be able to do our best at it.
Yeah, like
So
you mentioned the messaging while you're like trying to do something else and your kid's hanging on you. You like how many
yes.
times have we like done the like, oops, misspelled the text and
Mm-hmm.
just said who knows what? Because we're trying to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is why I teach
Yeah.
that question. What is it time for? Like when we're
Mm,
present to the answer to that question, then I think that helps eliminate the distractions and the multitasking
yes.
because you identify, like, even if it's for the next 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes, like you said, like, it's going to take longer if I multitask and I'm going to make more mistakes and things like that. So I love that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But what are some of
Yeah.
those fluff things? What are some of those things? And again, I want to
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
pick your brain about this because a guru is telling us, and it very may well have worked for them or have worked for them in the
Yes.
past or have worked for them because they have a team or they have a huge budget or they have, but like, so
Yes.
are there some things that are like fluff for everybody, or do you feel like
Yeah.
it's really a relative thing based on your business? And then, of course, what God's called you to, like, that's, of course, trumps everything. But are there things that are fluff across the board, or is it more like subjective based on your business?
Yeah, no, I think across the board, one of the biggest time suckers that I see people doing is focusing on more than one platform.
Mm.
And this is referring to people that do not have a team. So if you have a team of people that are helping you, or even a team of, two, right? Then it's like one of you could take one platform and one of you could take the other. But what I see is, there was this idea, and I still sometimes hear it, but I used to hear it a lot over the past couple of years. And it's like, be everywhere that you can. Everyone's looking for you, be everywhere that they're looking for you.
Yeah, yeah.
But what we don't often think about is, okay, if I'm on Facebook, that's great. If I'm on Instagram too, that would be better. But social media platforms do not work by just posting.
Mm.
They take understanding the algorithm. They take knowing how to do lead generation on them. So before before we move on to another platform, we have to make sure that we understand our one single platform really, really well and understand our messaging on there and how people interact with us, understand different posting strategies, understanding our lead gen system in there. And then some of those things later on, we might be able to transfer onto another platform and have a teammate or somebody that's going to help us do that effectively. But I think that's one of the major things that I see a lot of people doing. So it turns into fluff
Hmm.
it was a really great thing,
Great
right?
idea.
Oh,
Great intention. Yeah.
I'm gonna help more people if I'm in more places. But again, you're not doing the job really, really well because you're spreading yourself thin. So
Well,
one platform you might be showing up well, but the other platform is just kind of like just has posts there and nobody's like seeing them, you
yeah,
know?
and you're not interacting and you're not knowing if people
Yes.
interact. And yeah, what I wrote down was like, you're trying to be everywhere. You're actually nowhere because,
Mhm.
like you said, you're
Right.
spread so thin. No one's getting any of you. You might as well not be on any of it. And yeah,
Right.
okay.
Right. And then you end up having people that say, I'm doing all the work, like I'm doing it. Why am I not having success? So it's like, well, you're not having success because you've spread yourself thin and nobody's hearing your message
Yeah.
because you aren't meeting enough of the right people. You're not, engaging with them, like you said.
Yeah.
Another good one, and I know people have varying thoughts about this, but especially when we get started in business, um, something that turns into fluff is creating multiple offers.
Yep.
Because what tends to happen is when we're creating multiple offers, we end up getting into creation mode and we start creating, 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 which then fills our time instead of focusing on one offer that we know our clients need, refining that messaging, learning how to communicate it well, learning the sales process through it. And then over time, then we can add in something else that meets our ideal client in another level.
And essentially, if you think about it, every offer has its own best client and has its own
Yeah.
like sales and marketing strategy. So it's like you having multiple businesses, even though you think it's all one business,
Yes.
really like all these little ones that you're trying to keep up with. Um,
Yes.
I wonder if this would be one. And you mentioned this earlier, and that is listening, like consuming too much content yourself.
Oh,
Like you,
yes.
you talked about like listening to all the gurus because it's like if we are listening to 10 different business coaches, guess what? We've got 10 different ways to do business. And then of course we think I got to do this and this and this. And of course it's going to be better if I take her advice and his advice and put it all
Mm,
together in my business. Like,
yeah.
maybe speak to that. Like, because I think that could be a huge time waste because either they're conflicting because they're not meant to go together, or it just gets distracting. I think we can find ourselves
Mm,
just spending so much time. Like, I would challenge those people listening, how much time do you spend consuming content in a week?
yes.
Because it's like we can only, absorb so much. And then how much are you actually using? But we feel productive when
Mhm.
we feel like we're growing because I was on that training and I listened to another podcast and then I did this person's workshop. And, like, could that be another fluff thing of like just too much consuming of gurus
Yes.
and experts?
Yeah, absolutely. And my tip or like one piece of advice with this is to only do research with intentionality. So, if you are wanting to study, like let's say you want to be a productivity coach, right? Then you might choose to put on your calendar or your time block or whatever, that I'm going to spend some time being intentional, researching different types of productivity coaches and things that they offer just to expand my brain and see what's available.
Mhm.
Um, or maybe you want to learn more about Facebook. Well, you're not going to just randomly scroll on Facebook. You want to be intentional with your time, set a time limit, and take wherever you're researching. No, I'm getting on to this to only learn about Facebook advertising or whatever the topic is. Instead, when we're not intentional, when we don't have our outcome set before us, then suddenly it becomes endless scrolling, or one thing leads to another. You see somebody doing something, and then you go down her funnel, and then suddenly you're all over here. And then you deal with overwhelm and confusion. Suddenly you're so confused on your own message because you have just been taken down a rabbit hole.
Right? Yeah, it's like a
Again,
rabbit
which
trail.
yeah, which it all comes down to like really understanding your intention in those times and the outcome that you want. I mean, I have a really great communications coach, and part of his package, right, is this um, a vault of information. And there are some people that are in that vault all the time, and they're sharing what they're learning. And I'm thinking, if they're in there all the time learning all this incredible stuff, when do they have to work? Right. And so it's important to like understand what our priorities are, what our intentions and outcomes are. And that way, for me, if I wanted to learn on a specific subject and I block the time for it, then I'm going to go into his vault and I'm going to learn about that specific topic. Um, Yeah.
It's putting boundaries in our time by saying, here's the focus and here's the time I'm giving it. So it doesn't just,
Hmm.
again, lead you in so many directions or take up so much
Yeah.
time. So, okay. So we've kind of
Hmm.
identified the fact that there's probably a lot of fluff that we're doing. And
Hmm.
you talked about the three essentials for business. And I love that you use the word essentials because that's part of what I teach CEOs around their time is there are four CEO essentials. Like not nice to haves, but must haves if you want to be intentional with your time and see the ROI, the fruit of it.
Hmm.
So, kind
Yeah.
of in that vein, like start walking us through what are those three business essentials that we should be focusing on instead of all of this extra fluff stuff that's not really producing much of anything.
Yeah. Okay. So are you ready to take notes? Because they're incredibly hard. Just joking.
Okay.
They're not.
It's always simple, but it's not easy. That's what I always say, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yes. Okay. So it's three words: meet, tell, sell.
mm,
So those are the simplistic terms or simplistic words that demonstrate larger things in our business. So when we're thinking of meeting as many people as possible, it's meeting as many of the right people as possible. And who are the right people? Our ideal client. Okay. Knowing where they're at. Essentially, this is lead generation. Okay. So when we're meeting as many of the right people as possible, this is lead generation. I think this is one of the most important aspects of our business besides knowing our messaging. Like that comes, and you are so good at teaching us. Even in your planner there's a section for this. Every day we're going to reflect on things.
mm,
Okay, so lead generation is number one. So understanding, first who your ideal client is, understanding the part of the journey that you actually help her with, and then knowing where you're going to find her. On Facebook, that could be groups. Instagram is a little bit more, complicated because you're not really using groups. You're doing more, you're doing different types of lead generation. But understanding the lead generation is going to help you know what systems and processes to put in place. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is to meet, tell. So the second one is to tell, and that is our content. So your content could be, a podcast. Your content could be a YouTube video. Your content could be social media posts. It can be lots of different ways that you share, but it's basically understanding your messaging and being able to communicate it well. And
mm,
then the third part is to sell. And I should actually say this is more like the word invite because
yes.
it's not about like, here's my offer, you know, but it's always inviting people to the next step. What is the next best step for them to take with you? And
Mm,
so if you're doing strategic content, suddenly, people are saying they're raising their hand or they're contacting you for, I don't know, a lead magnet or something, right? But then being able to know what are the steps in my process that are going to lead them to a call with me or lead them to my website link or whatever that thing is for you. It's saying, here's what we've talked about. This is the next best step for you, and always offering that invitation for them to learn more. So when we are meeting the right people as many of the right people as possible, we're telling them what we do and we're inviting them to take the next step with us. Suddenly we have a beautiful cycle that is so simple to duplicate. And it's just a matter of figuring out, and this is where, business strategy comes in. It just takes understanding what your process is going to be in those three areas. Occasionally, you're going to come into seasons of life where you're going to move into more of like creation mode. Like
sure.
maybe you're creating a planner, maybe you're creating a new course, maybe you're creating whatever that thing is. But that should come more seasonally. Our everyday type of jobs are those three things.
Mm,
And when we are doing things in our business, we need to make sure that they are going to fulfill one of those three things.
yeah.
If they're not, we need to look back and think, okay, is this something that I need to do? Is this
Mm,
something that I want to do? Or is
yes.
it something I think I should do?
Mm,
And if it's a think I should do, then it's like, well, where did you hear that?
yes. Yeah.
Why do you think that that's something that you need to do? Most times, if you think maybe you should do it, it's not something you should do.
Exactly. Yeah. I love this. I talk about the CEO focus activities, which are very much in alignment with this because these are the things that are going to consistently keep people coming into your world and inviting them to that next step. And I love that you talked about like the creation mode being in seasons, because what can happen is we go in our creation cave, right? When you're in creation
Yeah.
mode, you're like hunkered down. It's like being in Alaska in the winter, right? You're like under your blanket and you're like, okay, I'm just knocking this stuff out, and that's
Yeah.
great. But then you wake up one day and you're like, where are all the people? Everybody got distracted waiting for you and went off and found somebody else. And so even when we're in creation, like you said, I think we still need to have some level of these things. Maybe it looks different in that season if you're putting some extra time into creation, but we're still doing these things because one of the things I teach is where you are in your business today is the consequence of what you've been doing over the last 90 days.
Yes.
So if
So
you've
true.
only been creating for the last 90 days, great. Now you've got this amazing program, this amazing offer, but you got nobody to talk to and you're like
That's
starting from
right.
square one. So is there a way to be like, a both and instead of an either or because yeah, these are the things like you said, they're everyday essentials, not like
Hmm.
coming and going. And so I think this may be, I'm just thinking of the person listening who's going, why am I not seeing growth in my business? These
Yeah.
would be great things to go back to and say, am I consistently meeting, telling, and selling? And if
Yes.
not, how can I build some rhythms and routines and workflows around those such that, yeah, this is happening. So
Hmm.
like, okay, so I'm assuming this is part of your pathway to,
5K.
5K, right? And so we're not
Hmm.
talking about running a 5K, guys. We're talking about 5K months,
Yeah.
right? So
Right.
maybe kind of like tell us like why 5K, because I know you talk about this like threshold and why this matters. And so
Yeah.
like how do these three things really help move us towards that 5K faster? Because we're all about building an ROI in less time, right? And not wasting
Hmm.
so much time doing all the fluff.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm really excited to talk about this. Okay. So I did extensive market research. Going back to, way back when we started the interview, about my story and kind of like where God was leading me and told me to focus on these three things. Well, then I started doing a lot of market research and I was interviewing a lot of women. And something that stuck out for every single woman that I talked to, every single woman said when I asked, how much money do you want to make? They said, I just want to match my husband's income, or I just want to match what I made in corporate.
Mm,
Okay. So when we talked about it more, it was about 60K a year.
mm,
And so which comes down to 5K months. Okay. So that's where we got the pathway to 5K. It's that 5K month mark. But what else I had realized in those interviews was that these women, it wasn't that they didn't want to make 100K a year or more. It was that they didn't, it was like they couldn't dream that big
mm,
because again, they'd already been in, these are women that have been in business. They've been in online sales, coaching, or service providing for a couple years, few years for some of them. And these were the women that were saying, like, I feel like I'm doing all the things, but I'm not selling anything. And so they would see all of these other coaches online or the gurus that are saying, make 100K months or 14K months or all this big stuff. But they just, instead of thinking, oh, I can do that, they thought, what's wrong with me because I can't do that.
mm,
And so that kind of my story with their story that I was discovering inside these interviews, coupled with these three things, made me realize that what they are really needing is to cut through all of that fluff, have a very reliable system that they could use that gave these three things: the meeting as many of the right people, telling them what you do, and making offers or inviting. And so that is where the pathway to 5K grew from. And it has been beautiful. So women come into this program and they are literally doing so many things, so many things. Like even having an event, if they wanted to share a training, they had a to-do list of 10 to 20 things versus four. And so, we cut through all of those things and help them to focus on what is the most strategic things that we need to do. What are the most essential tasks that need to be done in order to make this event effective. And when we're talking about it to other people, what is the way that we're going to get people interested in coming to the event? Um, and so, all that to say, when people understand that business really comes down to these three things, and when we can create a system, a reliable cycle, so we teach in cycles
mhm,
in the program. So when we create a reliable cycle, suddenly they know exactly what to do And every month, it's just as simple as like, okay, this is what I'm doing this month. This is the theme that I'm doing it. And I just have to make sure that I'm consistent in showing up when I say I'm going to show up. But, I can't change that for anybody. Neither can you.
Right.
Um, but it becomes so much more easier to show up and be consistent when all the stuff that wasn't serving you is removed and like, okay, these are the three things and this is how I'm going to carry it out.
Yeah.
And suddenly women are having success. We've had so much success in this program. It's only been in existence for not even quite a year yet, and it's just been beautiful. But
Yeah.
again, it comes down to cutting out all those things.
Mhm.
And actually it also comes down to, and we haven't talked about it yet, um, but I'd almost love for you to carry this part on because you share in one of the videos that come along with your planner, you talk about being aligned with God's will.
Mm.
And so that is a huge piece that I think a lot of women in business, especially faith-based women, they come in the back of their mind, they're like, "Oh, I want to be aligned with the Lord," but they haven't actually made space to
Mm.
hear from God. It's busy, 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 go, go, go,
Yeah.
go.
I'm doing things
And so,
for him, but not doing it with him. There's a
yeah,
huge
yeah.
difference.
It
Yeah.
is. And it's taking it on ourselves to know what's for God versus like this. I know that this is pleasing to the Lord. I know that this is how he wants me to show up. Instead, we filled it with all of this stuff that leaves very little room for the Lord to give direction.
Yeah. And that's
And
why one of the
so,
things that I
yeah,
teach, and I was just sharing this with you before I hit record,
yeah,
is the most important time you can spend in your day is your daily CEO meeting with God. Right. I
yes.
think so often, like on those days when you wake up and you're like even for example, true story this morning, all of a sudden my eyes opened. Now I don't live in Alaska, right? And I was like, why is it light and I'm still in bed? And I was like, and I looked at, I turned my alarm on because I turned the numbers off so it doesn't keep me awake. And I was like, my alarm was not even set. But you know what? Like I could have been like, oh, I just slept in too late and whatever. But I was like, I would rather skip my Pilates than skip my time with the Lord. Like so okay, ixnayed that, got ready, had my time with the Lord because I know, like you said, it's
Yeah.
that making space to spend with him and just to
Yes.
be quiet and to listen and to let him
Yeah.
direct and to like give him my worries, my concerns, my fears, my joys, around life and business. And then
Mm,
really kind of go, okay, and what are the priorities today? And
yeah.
where are you calling me to trust you? And what are you calling me to let go of? And where are you calling me to focus? And yeah, I think the longer our to-do list, the more time we should be spending in that kind of meeting because like you said, I think it's
Mm,
it's going to cut out a lot of the fluff, in there
right.
as well. So I love that.
Mhm.
And I love that you're talking about like systemizing things, right? Simplifying and streamlining, like not overcomplicating it. Like it really, like you said, it's simple. It's not
Mhm.
easy because it's easy to overcomplicate things. It's easy to layer
Right.
more because we chase this, I'm not doing enough. We think the reason we're not getting results is because I'm not doing enough. And so we just layer on more things and don't realize that that's just spreading us so thin. It's really about doing the right things. And like you said, giving it time to then produce
Yeah.
and things like that that's gonna do that. So I love this and I love how you're working with women. It so parallels, what we do in the CEO Impact Program because these things
Mm,
matter. And yeah, it isn't about doing all the things, it's about doing the right things and all of that. So I want you to speak to that woman who's like she's not at that 5K mark yet. Either maybe she's hit it a couple times and it felt really good, but then you know how we have like so often, especially early on in business, it's like you have a great month, and then usually what happens is then you have this month that you're like way down, and then you have a great month, and then it's like this like yo-yo. So maybe she's in that place, or maybe she just feels like 5K
mm,
is just like, wow, that would be amazing. What
mhm.
would you say to her to kind of help encourage her in that direction?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is first, taking a step back, being okay to take a few days off of work
Mm,
for this part. It's the idea of like slowing down to speed up, but this slowing down is to recenter, realign with the Lord.
mm,
So first coming back and remembering and recalling with him, having a conversation about why am I here in the first place? Is this something that you really called me to? Or is this something that I chose to do by myself and thought that maybe that you wanted me to? So I think it's a really
mm,
important question to ask. And then I would ask for the Lord to shine light on the skill sets that he's given you and maybe some areas where you know you need to grow in. And I wouldn't do anything with that list yet. I would just have it down as something that over time, over the next year or two, you can strategically choose some of those skills to start practicing and growing in, knowing that your success is going to come over time versus, immediate because you're not ready necessarily for immediate, huge income success. I think most of us are not ready for that right at the beginning. There's um there's things that we have to grow in us
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah. Otherwise,
But I
we
would
can't
start,
sustain it. We may hit it, but
yes,
it's going to be fleeting.
yes, yeah. And then the next part goes into that sustaining. It's making a list of all the things that you have been doing
Mm.
and then deciding, are these things that I really do need to do, or are they things that I want to do or
Mm.
think I should do? If
Yeah, we
they
call
are
that an
want,
audit, right?
yes,
What's
yeah,
doing it? Why
you're
am I doing
auditing.
it? Yeah.
That's right. You're auditing your tasks and those anything that is I want or I think, go ahead and cross those out and
Um,
then just focus on the things that you need to do. And I know that sometimes it can feel like, oh, but I really do want to do this. I really want to grow over here. Here's the deal. If let me give an example of that. Let's say you already know how to use Facebook, but you want to grow over on YouTube, but you're in this part of your business where you haven't built consistent income yet. What I would encourage you to do is put the YouTube on a list of things that you want to do in the future and learn the skill in the future. And right now, put all of your investment, all of your time and energy into the platform that you already know something about because you will grow quicker there. Um,
yeah.
Anyway, so I would do
Yeah, I
that for
love that.
all of the, yeah, yeah. I would do that for all of your tasks, just going through and say, what do I really need to do? Anything that's not needed, remove from the list or make a different list for it that you can look back at later. And then create structure around those needs. And hopefully those needs will fall into the meet, the tell, or the sell, right? Or the meet,
Yes,
tell, and
yes.
invite. Um, and then from that, you build consistency around those three things.
Mm.
And building consistency to me is understanding when you say you're going to show up for work. So some people can only work 3 days a week. Some
Hmm.
people can work every day of the week, which I don't recommend, but but whatever that schedule is for you, if you're choosing to do lead generation 1 day a week, then that day every week you're going to show up and you're going to become consistent in that and showing up for it. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's giving yourself the space to practice it and build confidence in it.
Mm.
Because the more we practice something, the better that we get at it, the more confident we feel. And when we're confident on the basics, then that's when we get to look at that other list and say, okay, what now do I want to start working on this quarter or,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
year?
yeah.
And
I
then
love
you can start
this.
working on those.
This ties into the 4Ds, which are in the planner as well as in the CEO Impact Program, because one of them is delete. Yes, if it's a stuff
Yes.
thing, if it's a fluff thing, off the list. One of them is delegate. So those are things that do matter, but you're not the only person on the planet who can do it. Find someone who you can trade or swap or pay. But then that
Yeah.
third one is delay. And it's not the same thing as procrastinate. Procrastinate would be I should be meeting, telling, and selling, and I don't feel
Right.
like it. So I'm going to go binge something instead. But it's like what you said, where it's like now is not the time because these other three things need my focus. I'm intentionally going to put a reminder to come back to this in quarter 2 of next year or a year from now or whatever to evaluate is now the time for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, there's most of the fourth D,
Yeah.
which is delight, like the things that are either truly delighting and like these three things should be delighting when we're doing them well and we feel really
Mm-hmm.
called to what we're doing. I should be excited about meeting and telling and selling because this is me living out the mission that God has given me, and so it's leading to obviously even more delight and things like that. So, girl, we could
Yeah.
talk all day. I mean, you and I are
I
so aligned
know.
with, just helping women to really do this. The other thing I want to touch on is I love how you're going 5K months because you're right. For so long, I just did an episode on under goaling because for so
Mhm.
long, it's like the gurus tell you take your goal and multiply it times
Yeah.
10. That's your goal. And you just go, why even bother? It's not even going to happen. And then you don't go anywhere or barely anywhere
Yeah.
versus setting that goal that you look at and you're like, it's already done. Like
Yeah.
5K could be like one of those, I called it a tetelestai goal. Tetelestai is what Jesus said when he died and said, it is finished. Like
Finished.
this goal is
Oh, I
finished.
love that.
5K months,
Yeah.
like tetelestai, it's done, and I just show up and do the consistent work with the belief that it's already done. And guess what? When you do that, very often you do grow beyond the 5K
Yeah.
because you've set, that goal that is already like, okay, with God, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And then just continue to grow. So yeah, I love this.
Mhm.
Love this. So
Yeah.
we, like I said, could talk all day. We've only scratched the surface of your
I know.
expertise and what you have to offer and things like that. So, what is a next best step for someone to connect with you, to reach out to you, to learn more about who you are and what you do and things like that?
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I have a website. It's teresataylorcoaching.com, but the best way to get a hold of me is on Facebook. And just my regular profile, Theresa Taylor. You'll go there. That's where I do my business from. That's where I meet incredible people from. And I love it. So I would say that's like the best place to reach out to me. And I'm an open book. So if there's anything that you want to know about my life and my personal experience, I'm happy to share that. Like I said, I'm also a homeschooling mom. And so a lot of people have questions about that and how do you do that around a
Ah,
business? And yeah, so I'm happy to help in any way.
I love that. And it's keeping business personal, like, because I don't
Yeah.
want to get so big that I don't personally like really able to connect with the people that I'm working with, like where it's just go to my website and find what you need. Like, I love the fact that you're like, come, let's connect. Facebook friend
Yeah.
me, send me a DM. So we will make sure to link to that in the show notes. And my audience knows I always invite my guests into the Redeem Her Time community where we take the
Yay.
conversation off the podcast and we get to keep talking
Yeah.
and implementing, right? So I always ask a community question, and I think a really great one is going to be around which of these essentials do you need to focus on next? Is it
Yeah.
meet? Is it tell? Is it sell? So I'm going to put a poll inside the Redeemer Time community, and I'm going to challenge you guys, not just encourage you, to go in there and vote on it. Like raise your hand and say, this is the one that I am going to be intentional about being consistent
Mhm. Yeah.
and not getting distracted by stuff and fluff and shiny objects and things like that. And then Teresa and I will be in there to encourage you, to help you, to offer some, resources and support and things like that. And like, let's make like as we head into this new year, like this is the year that 5Ks are going to be done. Like it's going to be like to tell
Yes.
us, guy, got
And
that.
more.
Like, what's
Yes.
next? Right.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yes, I love this. So
Mhm.
if you guys are not members of the community, I don't know what you're waiting for. This is a free community where, okay, I'm just going to say this because I talk about this inside my community, but I haven't talked a lot about this on the podcast. So, you know how you like are members of Facebook groups, but like you're not allowed to promote yourself. And if you do, you get like slapped on the wrist or your post gets blocked because they said you were promoting yourself, or you can only promote yourself on Saturdays on the sales Saturday post in the comments, or they're going to delete it. That's not how things work in the Redeem Her Time community. You can promote yourself and what you do any day of the week because I believe if you are called to what you do in business, you should be talking about it.
Yeah.
Now, of course,
Mhm.
not like in this like slimy, salesy, whatever way, but like I think we should be bold and loud and proud and giving God the glory and talking about it and connecting with others and collaborating and things like that. So this is an open invitation. If you're looking for a networking group where you can actually network and promote yourself, you guys need to come in the community. So the link I'll put in the show notes as well. It's redeemhertime.com/community. I also do business spotlights in there where you get a personal interview that lives on forever. And you never know who you're going to meet. So you're going to get to hang out with Teresa and me and some other amazing Christian women, business owners who are really making a difference and shining. So I'm excited. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Teresa, for sharing your wisdom, your expertise with us today. I know that a lot of women are going to be blessed by what you had to say today because
Mm.
this relates to our time, it relates to our ROI, right? So,
Yeah.
in closing, I always like to ask my guests this question to get into kind of your heart and calendar. So, especially as we're looking into
Okay.
the year, where are you
Mm.
wanting to invest time in this next season? And what's your
Yeah.
ROI why? Like, why do you want to see a good return on
Mm.
that time investment?
Okay, so it might sound kind of cheesy, but I do want to step more back in my business and have more intentional time with the Lord,
Mm,
specifically with my children. We do a devotional every day, but I feel like I need more room to expand in that area with them. In saying that, I know that there's going to have to be a little bit of time pulled somewhere else, and I don't know what that looks like yet, but it's something that I'm working with the Lord right now. And so I'm definitely, I'm raising warriors for the Lord, and so and healthy warriors. I want us to be strong both spiritually and physically, and so I want to make time for that with my children.
You know what? That will always be time well spent. I mean, that has a ripple
Yeah,
effect. That's building a legacy. That's
absolutely.
way beyond. I mean, a 5K month is great, but let's be honest, being
Yeah.
able to put, like God's truth into the hearts and minds of not only yourself, but also those you love, like that's priceless.
Yeah.
It's eternal
Yeah. Yeah.
impact.
And I
So,
think I think too, like as a leader, for the women that I serve, I think it's important that they see that my priorities are aligned a certain way.
mhm.
Because just like we are good stewards of our time, we also need to be good stewards of the people that we lead. And so that's really important to me too.
Yeah,
So
I love it. I love it.
thank
Well,
you.
lots of prayers, and I'll have all kinds of resources, to help you do that. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that that's where you want to put your focus. So thank you so much for being here today. Thanks everyone for listening. Who can you share this with? Don't keep this to yourself right now. Click that button, share it out with somebody, share it on social, share it directly with a business bestie who needs to hear exactly what this conversation's been about. And then we'll see you guys over inside the Redeemer Time community. All right. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Bye.